The morning that changed Ray Calloway's life didn't look like anything special. It looked like every other Monday in Millbrook, Ohio. Gray sky, cold concrete, the smell of motor oil and burnt coffee hanging in the air of his small garage. Ray had owned Calloway Auto for 11 years. 11 years of skinned knuckles, late nights, and honest work. He wasn't rich. He wasn't famous. He was just a man who knew engines the way some men know scripture, deeply, quietly, and without needing applause. He was underneath a rusted pickup truck when he heard the knock. Not on the door, on the frame of the open garage bay. A hesitant knock, the kind that isn't sure it has the right to be there. He rolled out from under the truck and saw her. She was maybe 32, 33. Brown hair pulled back in a way that said she hadn't had time to do anything with it. She wore scrubs, the light blue kind that nurses wear, and she was holding the hand of a little girl, who looked about 6 years old, wide-eyed and clutching a stuffed rabbit to her chest. Behind them in the parking lot sat a 2009 Honda Civic that had clearly been pushed to its limits for far too long. One of the front tires was nearly flat. The front bumper had a crack in it held together with what appeared to be packing tape. "I'm sorry to bother you," the woman said. Her voice was steady, but her eyes were the eyes of someone who had been carrying something heavy for a very long time. "My car it died, right at the corner of 5th and Maple. A man down the street helped me push it here. He said you were honest." Ray wiped his hands on a shop rag and stood up. He said, "Right. What's your name?" Claire Merritt." She put her hand briefly on her daughter's shoulder. "This is Lily." Lily looked up at him with enormous brown eyes and whispered, "Hi." "Hi yourself," Ray said. He crouched down to her level. "You like cars?" Lily considered this with the full seriousness of a 6-year-old. "I like rabbits." Ray almost smiled for the first time that day. "Fair enough." He told Claire he'd take a look, and she nodded and sat down in the plastic chair by the door, the chair he kept, there for exactly this kind of moment, for the people who had nowhere else to go while they waited. Lily sat beside her and began whispering to her rabbit. Ray popped the hood. What he found wasn't complicated, but it wasn't cheap either. The alternator was shot. The serpentine belt was cracked and days from snapping completely. The battery was running on whatever last reserves it had. Someone had been nursing this car for months, past the point where it should have been in a shop, because they didn't have the money to bring it in. He recognized the signs. He'd seen them all his life. He walked back to where Claire was sitting. She looked up at him with that same steadiness that he now understood was not confidence. It was the practiced calm of a woman who had learned to absorb bad news without falling apart, because falling apart wasn't something she could afford. "Alternator's gone," he said. "Belt's about done too. I can fix both. Get you a new battery." She nodded slowly. "How much?" He did the math in his head. Parts, labor, the shape of her tires, the tape on her bumper, the worn edges of her shoes. "What do you do for work?" he asked instead. She blinked, surprised by the question. "I'm a nurse, over at Millbrook General. Night shifts mostly." She paused. "Since my husband passed, it's just me and Lily." Ray looked at Lily, who was now making her rabbit hop along the armrest of the chair and whispering what sounded like a full story to it. He looked back at Claire. "When do you need to be at work?" "Tonight, 7 o'clock. Come back at 5, he said. "Car'll be ready." Claire stood up slowly. "You haven't told me the price." 5 o'clock, he repeated and turned back toward the garage. He heard her pause behind him. Then quietly, "Thank you." Just 2 words, but the weight of them filled the whole room. He worked through his lunch break. He changed the alternator, replaced the belt, put in a refurbished battery he had in the back that was still in perfectly good condition. He patched the tire. He checked the oil, the brake fluid, the coolant. By the time he was done, that Civic wasn't new, but it was safe. It would get her to work. It would get Lily to school. It would do its job. When Claire came back at 5, she had Lily with her again. The little girl was wearing a different outfit now, a purple jacket with a butterfly on it. And she had apparently decided that Ray's garage was not a scary place, because she walked straight in and began studying the equipment with great interest. Claire stood at the counter. Ray slid the keys across. She stared at them. "What do I owe you?" "Nothing." The word landed between them like something solid. Claire looked up sharply. "I can't accept." "You can," Ray said. "And you will. Car's done. It's safe. Go take care of your patients tonight." For a moment, Claire Merritt, this woman who had held herself together through Loss and exhaustion and years of solitary struggle. Looked like she was going to break. Her jaw tightened. Her eyes went bright. She breathed in slowly through her nose and pressed her lips together. And Ray understood that she was fighting very hard not to cry in front of a stranger. "Why?" she finally said. "Just that." Ray shrugged. "My mother was a nurse," he said. "Single mom. Drove a car worse than yours." He picked up his shop rag. "Go on." "Now, before we go any further, if this story is already holding your heart, then stay with it. Because what happens next is the part that will change the way you see the world. Watch until the very end. And if a story like this deserves to keep being told, hit that subscribe button, because there are 100 more waiting for you here." 3 weeks passed. Ray didn't think about it much. He helped people when he could. He charged what was fair. He went home to his house, the small one on Delaney Street that he'd bought with 12 years of savings, and that always felt a little too quiet since his dog, Chester, had passed last spring. He cooked simple food. He watched baseball. He slept. Then, on a Thursday morning, Claire came back. She wasn't in scrubs this time. She was dressed in jeans and a dark green coat, and she was carrying an envelope. A plain white envelope, sealed, with nothing written on the outside. She set it on the counter in front of him without saying anything. Ray looked at it, then at her. "What's this?" "Open it," she said. He did. Inside was a check. The number on it made his vision go slightly strange for a moment, the way vision does when the brain needs a second to catch up with the eyes. It wasn't a small amount. It was significant, deeply significant, the kind of number that could change the direction of a life. He looked up. "Claire, please let me explain," she said, and her voice was the most steady he had ever heard it. She had rehearsed this moment. She had prepared for it the way she prepared for difficult conversations with patients, calm, clear, no room for argument. "The night you fixed my car," she began. "I made it to work by 6:58. 2 minutes to spare." She paused. "There was a patient who came in that night, a man, 64 years old, construction worker. Came in alone because he didn't want to bother his family. He'd been having chest pains for 2 days and kept telling himself it was nothing." Her voice didn't waver. "If I had not been there on time, if my car hadn't started, the nurse who would have been covering my floor was already managing a crisis on another wing. He would have waited 30 minutes, maybe 40. Ray was very still. "He had a widowmaker," Claire said. "That's what they call it. A blockage in the left anterior descending artery. When I saw him, I knew in under 2 minutes. We had him in intervention within 15. She looked directly at Ray. "He is alive because I was there. Because you fixed my car." The garage was very quiet. "His name is Gerald Hayworth," she continued. "He owns Hayworth Construction. When he found out what had happened, when I eventually told him the whole story, he insisted on doing something. He wouldn't take no for an answer." She nodded toward the envelope. "That's from him. And a portion is from me, what I could contribute from 3 months of saving." She folded her hands. "He also wants to offer you something else. He has a property on the north side of town, a commercial building, twice the size of this garage, sitting empty for 2 years. He's offering it to you at a long-term lease rate that is, his word, embarrassingly fair," he said. And I'm quoting him exactly. "A man who works like that deserves a bigger stage." Ray sat down on his stool. He wasn't sure his legs were going to hold him otherwise. He looked around the garage, his garage, the walls he'd painted himself, the tool chest his father had left him, the plastic chair by the door, 11 years. "I didn't fix that car to be rewarded," he said. "I know," Claire said. "That's exactly why you deserve to be." He looked at the check again. He thought about what a bigger garage would mean. More lifts, more equipment, the ability to hire the 2 young guys from the vocational school who'd been asking him about apprenticeships for a year, and whom he'd had to turn away because he simply didn't have the space or the cash flow to take them on. He thought about what Gerald Hayworth was still able to do: breathe, walk, see his grandchildren, because of a simple act on a gray Monday morning. He thought about his mother, driving that old rattling Buick to the hospital every night, holding the world together with both hands and very little recognition. He put the check down. He pressed his hands flat on the counter. And for the first time in a very long time, Ray Calloway allowed himself to feel the full weight of something good. "Tell Mr. Hayworth," he said slowly, "that I'd like to meet him." Claire smiled. It was the first real smile he had seen from her. Not polite, not composed, but alive. "He's in the parking lot," she said. He wanted to wait until you opened the envelope. Ray laughed. It came out of him like something that had been waiting. A real laugh, surprised and warm and genuine. He came around the counter. He walked to the garage door. And in the parking lot, leaning against a truck with his arms crossed and a grin on his weathered face, was a big man in a canvas jacket who raised one hand in a wave when he saw Ray appear. Ray raised his hand back. 3 months later, Callaway Auto reopened on North Commerce Street in a building 3 times the size of the old garage. The sign above the door was new. The lifts were new. 2 young men from Millbrook, vocational, Marcus and Dean, showed up on the first day in clean work shirts. Nervous and ready, Gerald Hayworth was there for the opening. He shook Ray's hand for a long time and didn't say much. Because some things don't need to be said, Claire came to with Lily, who wore her purple butterfly jacket and presented Ray with a drawing she had made of a car with a very large, very yellow sun above it. She had written at the bottom, in uneven first-grade letters, "The nice man who fixed Mom's car." Ray had it framed. It hung above the counter, right where everyone who walked in could see it. He never stopped doing what he had always done. He charged what was fair. He helped when he could. He never once turned away someone whose eyes looked like they had been carrying something heavy for too long. And every morning when he opened those big new garage doors and felt the cold air come in and heard the sound of engines and work and life beginning again, he thought about a gray Monday morning, a woman in scrubs, a little girl and her rabbit, and the quiet miracle that had happened in a small space where an ordinary man had simply chosen to be decent. Sometimes that's all the world needs, and it gives it all back.